Good morning. Good morning. As you know, I like to start a little early so you can get yourself gathered together for the 9 o'clock start time because we're going on to our last experiment today. I cannot believe that we've been through 9 experiments already. I mean, we started with the Albert Einstein theory that you're bigger. Well, that was in the middle there, but bigger than the field of energy that you are. We did the Volkswagen Jetta principle where we were looking for butterflies or purple feathers or champagne. I called it champagne, but it's some other color that sunset beige cars. We looked for those, and when you start looking for things, you see them. Isn't that crazy? And we were just to ask for things. So today we're going over experiment 9 in Pam Grout's E-squared, and it's the loaves and fishes principle. The universe is limitless, abundant, and strangely accommodating. I had that experience just this weekend when I lost my phone. And I lost it. I went to the tidal basin with my husband. We walked around and saw the beautiful cherry blossoms. It was a little chilly, but we had a blast. And we were going in, waiting. We took the water taxi down from Alexandria to the wharf. And then we had come back to the wharf to pick up the water taxi. And we're going into a bar for just a drink before we headed back. And he said, "What time do we have to be at the dock or the pier?" And I looked at my phone and I told him what time we had to be there. And I put my phone away. And in the 10 steps between looking at my phone and sitting down at the bar, my phone disappeared. Now, I'd been looking at new phones. I wasn't attached to getting a new phone, right? But I was looking at new phones. And so it's kind of like, okay, so I'm getting a new phone. But the reason I could take this so easily is because I'd followed my intuition the night before that said, get your driver's license out of the back, that little sleeve that's on the back of your phone. And I kept my credit card in there because I didn't have Apple Pay. I didn't put it in Apple Pay. And so I could have lost my phone and my driver's license and my credit card, or our credit card, Ken's and my credit card, if I hadn't just listened to and acted on that little piece that said, oh, don't put that in, don't leave that in your phone. So for me, it ended up being a really good experience. And now it's so easy if you back up into the iCloud, it's like, wow. I mean, I was out of there in probably an hour. It was, it was awesome. And I got a money green colored phone. All right, so enough about me, but that is how easy it is. That's how things can be. I was upset, but not like, the most upsetting part was talking to AT&T because I didn't connect the first 2 times with anybody who knew what they were doing. So here we are. And this is Loaves and Fishes principle. The universe is limitless. Most people come to know only one corner of their room, one spot near the window, one narrow strip on which they keep walking back and forth. Rainer Maria Rilke, Bohemian Austrian poet. The premise. This experiment will dispel the myth that life sucks and then you die. Most of us, whether we admit it or not, believe life is hard. We believe there's only so much to go around, whether we're talking money, time, popcorn at the multiplex cinema. Even people with Maseratis in their garage spend way too much time figuring out how to get more. Why? Because they mistakenly believe there's not enough. Even billionaires, even people with an overabundance of resources, live under the oppressive spell of there's not enough. A friend of mine was interviewing the wealthy owner of a successful business whose company was launching a new product. Noticing the rabid dollar signs in his eyes, she asked him if there was a profit margin, a success index, a dollar amount of some kind that he would consider enough. The business owner stopped for a moment, sighed, and gave this reply. Man, you just don't get it. There is never enough. It's like a game of musical chairs. Everyone's worried that when the music stops, they'll be the one without a place to sit. And I'm putting it in reality. We are rich beyond measure, but we feel strapped and scared and always on guard. Sure, we call ourselves an abundant society, but in many ways, it's nothing but an illusion, a ruse, thanks to the ever-present, there's not enough mantra. We're too busy playing musical chairs, running faster and faster around that illusory circle of shrinking chairs. Contrary to everything you know, the Fish and Loaves Principle proposes that there is a natural law of abundance, and that everything's okay and you can relax. Hey, Jean. When Jesus prayed to multiply the fish and loaves, he didn't fret over how this was to come about. He simply put his thoughts into laser-like formation, namely that abundance and plenty were his divine right. Likewise, for the duration of this experiment, you're going to set aside your normal thinking patterns, allowing them to be superseded by the remote possibility that there might be enough for everyone. Something is wrong with this picture. And Pam Grout goes on. If you think there's a boogeyman, turn on the light. Dorothy Thompson, American journalist and broadcaster. Scarcity and lack is our default setting, the unquestioned conditioning that defines our lives. The belief that there's not enough starts first every morning when the alarm clock rings. I didn't get enough Z's. Before we even sit up, before we even squeeze our feet into our bunny slippers, we're already bemoaning lack. When we finally do get up, it's like, now I don't have enough time to get ready. And we spend huge chunks of our energy worrying and complaining that there's not enough time. Our paychecks aren't enough. Our weekends aren't long enough. We're not thin enough. We're not smart enough. We're not educated enough. And it's time to examine that not enough mantra, because it's making our lives unsatisfying, our jobs unfulfilling, our friendships lacking. This not enough friction drives us to do things we're not proud of, things that compromise our highest ideals, things that lay waste to the natural world, things that separate us from our highest selves. And once we define ourselves as deficient, all our energy gets sucked into making sure we are not the ones being left out, not the ones losing ground to the other guy. But here's the deal. It's all a big, fat, unfortunate lie. There is enough for everyone. We live in a big, bounteous universe. And if we can just get over this unfounded fear of not enough, we can stop hoarding resources. Come on, man. Who really needs 89 pairs of shoes? And free up our energy to make sure that we all get enough. The Chumash Native Americans who lived for thousands of years on the central coast of California enjoyed what I would call rich and prosperous lives. They lived in a small, close-knit village and used the natural resources around them to make canoes, arrows, and medicines. They regularly dined on more than 150 kinds of seafood, honeydew melons, and pine nuts. They made fur blankets, soapstone pots decorated with shells, and extraordinary baskets so tightly woven they could hold water. Almost every day, the Chumash played games, danced, sang lullabies to their children, and enjoyed a cleansing sweat in the village hothouse. Nowadays, we call that type of lifestyle subsistence. We look down on it as hard scrapple existence. But what I'd like to suggest is that the Chumash, unlike us, lived in an economy of abundance. To the Chumash, there was always enough. Not too much, not too little, enough. Most important, there was enough time for things that matter. Relationships, delicious food, art, games, and rest. Right now, with the resources already at your disposal, you don't have to get a new job or find a new relationship or even start a time-consuming new yoga practice. You can begin to recognize and lead a rich and meaningful life. And the best part is, you can quit working so damned hard. Take it easy for a change. Bliss happens. What if this powerful force was used to uplift people rather than to keep them trapped in the corporate and the religious food chain? Mark Vicente, director of What the Bleep Do We Know? The bottom line is we have no conception of the limits we have placed on our perception. If we really knew the extent to which we have denied the world's loveliness, we would be shocked. Our confusion is so profound that we cannot even conceive of a world without sacrifice. But here's the thing, the world contains no sacrifice except what we laid upon it. It's worth pausing for a moment to consider just how deluded we have become. So we're going to look right now into Colonel Mustard at the Conservatory with the Wrench. If you want to know more about some of these, just type in my Facebook group here, #E2, and what'll come up is all the previous experiments where we are testing the laws of the universe and asking for what we want. So Colonel Mustard in the Conservatory with the Wrench. Common sense is the collection of prejudices acquired by age 18. Albert Einstein, German theoretical physicist. I was playing the board game Clue with a couple of my daughter's friends, and we passed out the detective notebooks and placed the rope, the lead pipe, and other miniature weapons in the miniature mansion's miniature rooms. I said to Kylie, who was playing Professor Plum, "Why don't you go first?" "Mom, Mrs. Grout," they loudly protested. What? What did I say?" "Everybody knows Miss Scarlet always goes first." Likewise, they explained that in order to make an accusation, you have to be in the room where you think the murder took place. And if you want to take a secret passageway, you can only do it between the parlor and the kitchen or the library or the conservatory. "Who says?" I asked. "The rules. It says so right here." One of them thrust the book, neatly printed rule sheet right in front of my face. These engraved in stone rules reminded me of how we play life. Somebody decided that this is how the world works, and because we all agreed to see it that way, we have made it reality. Turns out we've all been had. Nearly all the concepts and judgments we take for granted are gross distortions of the things as they really are. Everything we think is real is simply a reflection of the clue rules we all agreed upon. The world we think we see is merely the projection of our own individual clue rules. Maybe it's time to change those rules and look through another lens. Anecdotal evidence. Being gloomy is easier than being cheerful. Anybody can say, I've got cancer, and get a rise out of the crowd. But how many of us can do 5 minutes of good stand-up comedy? PJ O'Rourke, former Rolling Stone correspondent. Karen Johnson always knew she wanted to be an actor. In fact, she says her first coherent thought as a young child was, man, I'd love to act. Even though she grew up in New York Projects theater and what she called pretending to be someone else was a big part of her life. This was back in the days when Joe Papp brought free Shakespeare to her neighborhood in Chelsea. She also watched a lot of movies with her brother Clyde and her mom Emma, who raised 2 kids on a single salary. When I saw Carol Lombard coming down those stairs in that long satin thing, I thought, I can do that, she says. I wanted to come down those stairs and say those words and live that life. You can be anything up there in the movies. You could fly. You could meet alien life forms. You could be a queen. You could sleep in a great big bed with satin sheets in your own room. By the time she was 8, she was acting for the Hudson Guild Community Center, a children's daycare / theater / arts program near her neighborhood. Her life took a detour in high school when her dyslexia caused her to get mistakenly classified as slow, possibly retarded. She dropped out of school, became a junkie, and forgot all about her acting dream. By the time she was 19, she was a single mom herself. The good news is she did kick the drugs. In fact, her daughter's father was the drug counselor who helped her get off the junk. The bad news is he wasn't cut out to be a father. He left a few months after her daughter, Alexandria, was born. Karen was a high school dropout with no skills. In fact, the only thing she knew how to do was take care of kids. She took a job as a nanny and moved to Lubbock, Texas, with a friend who hired her. Eventually, the friend moved to San Diego, and Karen and her daughter gladly followed. When the relationship went south, she found herself stuck in California with no money and no skills. She didn't even know how to drive, a major hindrance in freeway happy California. I had no high school diploma, she says. All I had was me and my kid. Yeah, and that, man, I'd love to act dream. During the day, she learned to lay bricks and went to cosmetology school. At night, she played around in an experimental theater troupe. For a while, she did hair and makeup for a funeral home, supplementing her income with welfare checks. Worrying about how to get my kid more than one pair of shoes or how to make $165 worth of groceries last a month. Through it all, she continued to believe that anything is possible. She continued to believe that she could be like Carol Lombard, floating down those stairs in satin. Acting is the one thing I always knew I could do, she says. Her unwavering belief finally unlocked the door. In 1983, famed Hollywood director Mike Nichols happened to catch her performance in an experimental troupe in Berkeley, the Black Street Hawkeyes. He was so blown away by the character she played that he signed her immediately for a one-woman performance, The Spook Show, on Broadway. Steven Spielberg caught that show and cast her as Celie in The Color Purple. By then, she changed her name to Whoopi Goldberg. I can do anything. I can be anything. No one ever told me I couldn't. No one ever expressed this idea that I was limited to any one thing. And so I think in terms of what's possible, not impossible, Whoopi says in her autobiography book. I knew I could never turn water into wine or make cats speak French, but I also learned that if you come to a thing with no preconceived notions of what that thing is, the whole world can be your canvas. Just dream it and you can make it so. So how are we going to do this, right? Our method this week, this Monday for 48 hours, reality is merely an illusion, albeit a persistent one. Albert Einstein, German theoretical physicist. This experiment will prove that what Sally Field finally figured out when she won the Oscar for Places in the Heart. You like me. You really like me. It will prove how sublime your world really is. For the next 48 hours, you're going to keep track of goodness and beauty. The record of history, of course, is written in blood in wars, treachery, and competition. But as paleontologist Stephen Jay Gould said, the fossil record shows long, uninterrupted periods of biological stability. In fact, it's a structural paradox that one violent act so distracts us from 10,000 acts of kindness, we forget the 10,000 acts of kindness. Human courtesy, kindness, and beauty, he claimed, are the norm. He called it our duty, our holy responsibility to record and honor the victorious weight of all the innumerable little kindnesses that are all too often unnoted and invisible. Keep a journal on hand for the next 2 days and list these kindnesses. Hey, Amy. Here are some examples of what you might write. My wife gave me a kiss before I left for my doctor's appointment. The receptionist and I compared pictures of her new baby and my new grandson. When I entered my office with an armload of books, a stranger held the door open for me. The man at the lunch counter smiled and said, "What's up?" Students in the overcrowded lunchroom graciously shared a table. My email misbehaved and a colleague helped me sort it out. A colleague in another state responded to my testy message with grace and goodwill. So what are the wonderful things that you are going to remember? And I know, just waking up in the morning with a thank you, thank you, thank you sets the tone for the day. Shout out to Diane Betancourt who taught me that. So what we're going to do, if you look up in the notes, you can find this lab report and print it out. And you're going to just make note. The principle we're working on for the next 48 hours, the Fish and Loaves Principle, the theory, the universe is limitless, abundant, and strangely accommodating. The question, is my focus on the negative keeping me from seeing reality? The hypothesis, if I change my outlook and make a concerted effort to look for goodness, beauty, and abundance, it will show up in spades. Time required, 48 hours. Today's date, write it down. And the time you start this exercise, write it down. number of kind, beautiful, good things, and then you've got lines to write that. The approach. I've heard the old adage, what you appreciate appreciates. So I guess I'll give it a whirl. Who knows? Maybe expressing gratitude is more than just some mumbo jumbo Pollyanna Oprah thing. Willie Nelson, after all, said that when he started counting his blessings, his whole life turned around. And like Willie, I'm willing to bet on the probability of peace, bliss, and joy. Consequently, I will actively seek goodness with a vengeance. And then you can write down everything that you have noticed. We have more possibilities available in each moment than we realize. Thich Nhat Hanh, Buddhist monk, peace activist. So I cannot wait to try this one and see all the goodness that does show up. It's crazy how when you look for things, you find them. We've learned that all through. And I look forward to seeing you on Thursday morning, 9 o'clock, where we'll be finishing up the book. And if you're interested in finding out how much you believe you deserve and a simple way to change that, there'll be an opportunity to find out a little bit more about that next Thursday, this coming Thursday, 9 o'clock. So I cannot wait to see what you create, looking for the good all around you. You guys are awesome at that. I know you are, but it's focus, focus. Hocus pocus, focus. All right, ladies and gents, my savvy travelers, enjoy this trip we call life. See you next time.